Hi, good morning. My name is Philip Hamner, and recently I was working on a application that aggregated reviews, pictures, information about restaurants in your local area. Um, I was responsible for the component that was actually the user review section. One of the interesting challenges I faced was trying to make my data realistic. So initially, I had done research on similar websites and how their users interacted with the site and found something called the 1990 rule, which indicated that only about 10% of users were ever engaged, so were ever associated with the review. So I decided to mimic this in my database by making 90% of my created users inactive. This would create an interesting engineering challenge as I was trying to. It would allow me to optimize in the future as I could skip over users that didn't have any reviews and focus on those that did when I was doing queries. Um, this was interesting. So this led to me making 10 million reviews, 10 million users on 400,000 restaurants. But I came to the decision that my data wasn't large or complex enough. This was only about 4 gigs. I had 25 reviews on average associated with each restaurant, so not super realistic. I decided to go a bit back to the drawing board and reseed my data. What I did was I really dramatically increased the number of restaurants. I was going for 10 million primary records, but that totally overwhelmed my computer because since I was doing 25x both reviews and users per restaurant, that meant that those data sets also had to increase dramatically. Um, so the 50 gigs of storage I had on my computer was insufficient, and I don't even know how large it was in the end. Um, so I decided eventually to pare back to 1.4 million restaurants with 35 million reviewers, 35 million reviews and users, rather than the 225 reviews and 225 million users, which is a lot more feasible. The other thing I tried to do was create a little bit more complexity. So rather than averaging 25 reviews per restaurant, I selected a number at random between 1 and 200 to increase the variability that I would see. So some restaurants would have 0 and some would have 200. A lot more realistic, and it would create a lot more engineering challenges for me to overcome later that I could use for optimization. The problem I did find that there was a big variability in the query speed when looking for all the reviews for a particular restaurant, depending on whether they had 0 reviews or 200, which makes sense. Um, let's see. Um, cool. So the other thing that I was trying to achieve was having enough photos. Uh, I chose initially I had decided to have an array within each data object that would hold every photo, but the problem was similar restaurants didn't have, or similar websites didn't have an upper limit on how many photos you could associate with a particular review. So I would have to make that massive, and each review would have to be massive to compensate. Um, the the decision I made eventually was to use out a left join to create copies of each review to associate it with each photo. So, for an example, when I queried one particular restaurant with 200 reviews, I got back 1,000 results. Um, so this wasn't ideal, but it was a pretty workable solution given the constraints I had and my alternative. Overall, this has been a really fun, interesting project, and I look forward to wrapping it up. Thanks for listening.